Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. My name is Olakule Kasumu, and it's great to be on this show where we just like to talk about books. Last week we promised that time to start digging into this book. It's the newest book in town. Well, it's the most talked about new book in town. The autobiography of the former head of state of Nigeria, General Yakubu Gowon. It's titled My Life of Duty and Allegiance. We waited for so long for this book to come out, and it finally came out, and everywhere is buzzing. People are talking about this book. There were two primary protagonists of the Nigerian Civil War, General Yakubu Gowon and Emeka Ojukwu. Why didn't they write their autobiographies many years ago? They owed us that story from their own perspectives. It was left to us to judge what they wrote. So we waited and waited. Unfortunately, Emeka Ojukwu did not write an autobiography. Well, no published autobiography on him before he passed away. And we're left with General Yakubu Gowon very recently. This year, 2026, he finally released one. And here it is, My Life of Duty and Allegiance. So we promised we'll start digging into this book, start exploring this. But today we are starting on a more general note, the culture of writing or not writing by our past leaders. What do you think about that culture? What is the problem with our leaders when it comes to writing? Why don't they write? Why don't they value history? Why are they not accountable when it comes to sharing history and documenting history? Is it a matter of choice for somebody who has occupied public service to write? Well, those and many more are explored in this conversation with two very brilliant minds, two of the most brilliant minds that I personally know. Let's get to meet with them and then explore this topic and this book by General Yakubu Gowon.
Dele Ogun is a historian, publisher, lawyer, speaker, and author. Ogun, who is the convener of the Fatherland Group, is an alumnus of London Metropolitan University, the Inns of Court School of Law, the Nigerian Law School, the Chartered Institute of Taxation of England and Wales, and the London School of Economics and Political Science. He is the author of several books, including A Fatherless People, Oyinbo Came to Africa, 50 Years of Britain, A Slave Ship Called Jesus, and Culprits, amongst others. Richard Mammah is the founding president of the Network of Book Clubs and Reading Culture Promoters in Nigeria, NBRP. Mammah holds bachelor's and master's degrees in English and Literary Studies from the University of Calabar and postgraduate certificates in International Business and Trade Fair and Exhibitions Management. Mammah is consulting editor, Business Hallmark newspaper, and author of History and Prospects of the Nigerian Book, Nana's Diary, and My Life in the World of Books.
Dele Ogun, Richard Mammah, nice to have you gentlemen on the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. It's been a while. I always enjoy speaking with you, so it's good to see both of you looking very well.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's dive in because of our time. We have little time to discuss something that, with both of you, one would have loved to just discuss for many days. But let's use the time that we have. Before we come to General Yakubu's new autobiography, as you well know, he has finally released his autobiography. Speaking to both of you individually, I know it is something you have been interested in for a while. When will General Yakubu go on publish his autobiography? When will he publish his autobiography? Finally, he has done so. But before we dive into that, the culture of our leaders in Nigeria, the culture of writing or otherwise, I would like us to discuss that. What are your views about the culture of writing as it pertains to leadership in Nigeria, political leadership specifically? If you look at our past leaders over the decades, not many of them have written much. So what's your take on this? Let me start with Dele.
Well, yeah, it's a welcome development, and you're right. Not enough of them have discharged that responsibility. I call it responsibility because the past is part of the present. That I think Churchill said, "The further back you look, the further ahead you will see." And I like to express it this way. I said, history is the lens through which we can see today's events more clearly. And the custodians of that history are those ones who've occupied positions and offices of responsibility. And when you look at their counterparts abroad, you'll see a whole rich reservoir of memoirs. Though, in fact, it's almost they can't wait to get out of office before writing their memoirs. Whereas in our own cases, I think they've been busy in the beer parlor rather than sitting down to the discipline of handing over the history that belongs to us and to posterity. So yeah, it's welcome. You use the word. He's finally released his memoirs, and I think that's the right word because I mean, these events are, 1960, 60-something years ago. I don't believe that he has only now at the age of 90, 60 years on, that he's written this. So good choice of word, is finally released.
Richard, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I would agree with Dele that fundamentally it is important that those who get into positions of leadership do continue the dialogue about their leadership and their vision for the country, because leadership is serious business, practically one of the most serious business anybody can conceive of. So if you get in there, you got in there to do a job, and whether you did it well or you not do it well, it's important that there will be stock taking, and you are and should be a participant in the stock taking process, more so because society is a continuum, so if you put your stock on record yourself, other people would also respond, and the society can fundamentally benefit, because since society does not stop, the society will be building progressively on both the successes and the failures, of leaders that hold and have held office. So I think, yes, I would agree, it's a duty, it's a responsibility, and I think maybe without being too hard on them, I think it is not very responsible not to do this, because it's a privilege to hold office, and it's your responsibility to ensure that office holding continues, with sobriety, with analysis, with assessment, with peer review, and all of that. So I think it's important that this be done, and I think it's good that we are finally gotten this book, out from the general. I hope that in the course of the discussion further, we can also be able to talk on some of the other, nuances and situations that are associated even with this particular book. Thank you.
Specifically, Balewa, I think he wrote one book, a fictional book. The most prolific, of course, of all of them is General Obasanjo, who has written has quite a long list of books he has written. Shehu Shagari wrote one autobiography. Zik wrote an autobiography and wrote a few others too. I think over 10 books to his credits, I think. And we're getting one from Yakubu Gowon now. So in terms of how much have they written, that's on the one hand. I would like you to speak to that. And on the other hand, in terms of the credibility, because there's always a question mark about whether or not they've written, they've narrated accurately what happened, whether or not they wrote the book themselves or not, and all those things that people have always debated and discussed all those things. I would like to get your take on those two issues, Dele.
Well, yeah, credibility is the big issue for me, because it's not quantity that matters, but quality. If we can get one good, credible account from somebody at the top, is far more valuable than 10 or 20 accounts which are just gist, if you like, or tales by moonlight. It is, as we said, it is a responsibility. And as Richard has said, it is a continuum, and it's like a relay. You pass on the baton responsibly, and so you pass on information, insights, and perspective on events that have happened, and are going to influence and shape the future. The Chinese are they're almost anal in terms of their approach to history and historical knowledge. We tend to say, look, let's move on, but it's that rush to move on that is responsible for the nonsense and the chaos that we are experiencing now. So not enough have done it. You restricted the list to prime ministers and presidents. I mean, people like Awolowo, of course, have written. He wasn't a prime minister or president, but he has written. And people like Enahoro wrote as well. And so these are the responsible ones. And it is incumbent, we say again, it's incumbent upon anybody who occupies any office of responsibility to share what they know and to do it credibly.
Now that last sentence, that's a heavy one. Richard, do you agree with that?
Yes. I think it's important that information be passed on, and I think it's also important that it be done honestly, factually, and truly, credibly. But again, if we try to bring in some context into the picture, I think that's part of the challenge, and I want to be honest on this. Part of the challenge that past leaders and even serving leaders had writing and documenting memoirs and autobiographies, in this sense, may also come from the nature of our country. This country has so many bottlenecks in its own processes. And those bottlenecks also tend to affect both leadership selection, leadership emergence, and leadership documentation, even in a post-leadership setting. Because there are so many conspiracies that get wired into the process. Many of these leaders ask themselves questions: how much can be spoken of, in the public domain? How much is it safe to put out there? And also because there has also been this whole issue of when people get into office and when they get out of office, how do they cope? How do they cope outside of office? Because you notice that many of the people who have been in office tend to stay around office. So that means that they have to be in the good books of successors, and replacements in that sense. And when you talk too much, as the other joke, the other minister joked, he said, you don't talk while eating. you also watch what you say after you finish eating.
Dele, I use the word finally. The war was 67 to 70. He left office 1975. This is 2026. Some will say better late than never. The book is finally out. How happy or excited are you? Or are you upset that the book is just coming out now?
I'm inclined to say that it will have been better never, rather than now. Why? Because you see, it goes back to the issue of credibility. These are events that happened in 1960s, and we are here in 2026, and it's finally been released. Credibility, a key part of it is the ability to corroborate and to interrogate the narrative. Many of the actors, he's enjoyed a long life, he's now 90. Others are falling along the way, not around to challenge the narrative that he now brings out. In the legal community, the quality of evidence is dictated very much by how contemporaneous the account has been made. If you wait 60 years to come and tell your story about the events that happened, a judge tends to look at that and say, well, why did it take you so long? Because memory fades. And in this case, the general has told us that he's largely writing from memory because his records have either been lost, destroyed, burnt, or disappeared. So it's very much an issue of credibility. It lacks that contemporaneous quality, and it suffers from the fact that it's been released after many of the principal actors who could have challenged what is now being handed over to us have left the stage. So I would have preferred that he didn't write it. I just don't trust the account. I just simply don't.
Richard, is that an extreme view held there by Dele? Do you agree?
I think his view has some basis, because the truth about it is that for those of us who write books, we know that to get a 5-10 year recall, an efficient 5-10 year recall, is not the easiest task to achieve. An efficient and a thorough 5-10 year recall time span. Now, when you are talking about 5, 6, 7 decades, then you are dealing with something quite more challenging. And like he also admitted, there are not exactly too many documentary proofs, documentary support to undergird a lot of the narratives, the tales that we have been handed down. So this book would definitely not pass as the most credible of attempts to document the story. Maybe 1 or 2 previous attempts, maybe Eliagu's attempt, or may even be a bit more tighter in that sense, because I would have supposed that they would have been in touch when he was doing that book. But I think that it's important, and maybe we should take this as a footnote to everybody who has not, who should and who has not written, that they should be careful to note that when they do write, people are going to ask questions and say, why did it take you, this much time? Because it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. It's difficult to remember your primary school classmates, your secondary school classmates, your military school classmates, who was in the room during an SMC meeting, who was not in the room, when you were in exile, what happened at a particular point in one particular tricky meeting. Even Aburi, it's difficult for you to recall exactly what happened, and so when you start raising very strong positions, authoritative positions on things that have happened 50, 60 years ago, we've got to ask questions. Hey, this authority, given the natural flow of time, memory, and space, right? This authority in itself is contestable. So this book does not come out as a definitive and an authoritative, account, of the period. It helps as maybe as a refresher, yes, as a guide, or the genre I myself prefer to work in historical fiction. But if you are going to call it history, then we may have an issue.
In fact, if I may touch on the point that Richard made there regarding Aburi, the Aburi account. From what I've heard, we were told originally that Aburi, our general's performance at Aburi was affected by he's suffering from malaria, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's why what was reported as having been agreed at Aburi was not quite what he thought he was signing up to. I mean, you start worrying as soon as you hear that in the first instance. And then, but I understand that the narrative has now moved on, or the explanation has moved on. It's now not malaria, I understand from what I've heard from the account. It is that the whole mission, the whole purpose of the exercise was more of an informal discussion, just explorative, rather than it was supposed to lead to some peace terms. You at that point you start to scratch your head and say, what can we believe?
The average person just wants to read about the Civil War when General Yakubu Gowon has written something. I find the aspect of the 1975 coup very interesting. The book, interestingly, starts with that narrative. Unlike classical autobiographies that are very chronological in order, this one starts with the story of the 1975 coup. And you could feel that General Yakubu Gowon, you could feel his unhappiness at the betrayal by his closest confidants, lieutenants, who executed the 1975 coup, led by particularly Joe Garva, who was the head of his brigade of guards back then. He was in Kampala then, as you recall, and when he had the news, when the news broke out. And one of the interesting things about that part is, there's this photo that is in circulation where people say the moment Yakubu Gowon was told, and that picture is right there on your screen, that a coup had been conducted in Nigeria. Well, in his book, he narrates how, contrary to that story, it was Idi Amin, the Ugandan leader, who actually broke the news to him. Yakubu, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Dangled the Reuters news reports. And that was when he knew that something had gone wrong in Nigeria. So many interesting things like that for us to talk about. But when we meet again, we'll try and focus more on the Civil War narratives in his book. So tighten your seatbelts, how they say, cross your feet, get a mug, and let's do 823 pages of General Yakubu Gowon's autobiography. Thank you very much for joining us, Dele and Richard, on Channels Book Club. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Always a pleasure speaking to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the beginning. Much more to explore. We'll start digging into more details now, like we hinted you right there. What did he really write about, especially when it comes to the Civil War? Who would pick this book and not go straight to all that he wrote about the Civil War? That's what most people want to hear about. And Dele and Richard will be joining us again to explore that. Stay tuned. Stay very close to this show. Stay very close to Channels Television. This is where we have to end it. As always, we'll be delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.